One of those model organisms that you probably have heard about is a fruit fly called Drosophila melanogaster. Drosophila melanogaster. Don't ask me what that stands for, but it just, that's the name. Has been used for a long time, actually quite intensively. For the first time in New York at Columbia University, Thomas Hunter Norman was the person who really systematically studied those critters at first. And I'll tell you why in a second, but I want to tell you first about the model organism that my lab works with. Those animals that we work with are called Caenorhabditis elegans. Now again, I don't really know what that stands for. I promise you that the elegans has nothing to do with being elegant, because they're really pretty damn ugly, as you'll see in the slides. But they are an organism that's even simpler than plants. Now, of course, you may wonder, I told you all that stuff about Parkinson's disease, and now I'm telling you about worms, right? I mean, what could be the possible relationship between, a complex human being like us and a worm, right? So here's where really the surprise came in. Something that people have always suspected, but have really gotten final proof for over the last 10 years or so, was that animals, very simple animals like worms, flies, or mice and humans, all share very basic principles of development. Development and function, in terms of how their body functions. Meaning they have all the same standard set of organs. They all have a nervous system, they all have blood, they all have donor to reproduce, all these simple things they have. But it's much less complex. Like, for example, in C. elegans, the worm with only 302 neurons. That's it. And the whole worm has 1,000 cells. So 1/3 of it is the brain. It's basically like a big crawling brain. You'll see pictures in a few minutes. Okay, but here's now the ultimate proof, if you want, why model systems will really tell you something that's relevant for other animals as well. And the proof came from when people started to sequence genomes. Right? So you basically have people, as I'm sure you've heard about it for the last 10 years or so, people have sequenced, meaning determined the exact code that is present in all genomes. In humans, for example, that was achieved in 2001 or so. And then they compared it to the genomes of more simple organisms, like C. elegans, the worm, or Drosophila. And what they find is that C. elegans and flies are essentially just, and this is a little oversimplification of your, excuse me for that, that essentially just scales down more complicated organisms. Right? They have all the same basic set of genes. They're lacking lots of things that the humans have, but more or less what worms and flies have, humans have as well. They have a little more complicated, a little more elaborate, but they have it as well. It's sort of like comparing a Ford Model T from whenever they were first built, 1910s or so, to a modern day Porsche, right? The principle is exactly the same, right? 4 wheels, engine, combustion engine, all this sort of stuff. I don't know anything about that stuff, but it's essentially the principles are the same. But of course, the Porsche can do much more, has much more features, gadgets, and so forth and so on that allows it to do many more complicated things, right? So that's sort of the motivation for people like myself and many other people, just to sort of give you an idea that you're not talking here, or that you're not sitting in front of some obscure freak here. There's about 1,500 people or so, just in the United States, that work on C. elegans, that do nothing else every day. So you basically zoom along the mouth, and now look, this is the mouth. Going there, right? Looks pretty gross, right? But basically, what you see in there entails all sort of, within that cubicle, there are all the organs that we have across the center. They don't have much sophisticated tools to, at first sight, to communicate with their environment, like they don't have eyes. But this mouth here, let's actually try that again. This mouth is a really sophisticated structure. These little knobs here at the end of the mouth, at the tip of the nose, if you want, has a lot of neurons there that sense exactly what's happening outside in the outside world. These are all sort of chemosensory neurons, exactly detect what chemicals are out there. You can sense temperature, for example, and